Turns out they didn't need the next day after all. The caribou were pacing around, distressed, in a clearing, pawing at the ground. Jada didn't even bother paralyzing them. Tink went straight to using her kill gun. After that was finished, they split bags of meat among themselves and headed back through the rural area toward the city as the clouds above turned darker and darker, being dyed black like ink spreading on paper. The air chilled, and even as casual, quiet conversation continued, the three North spheres started to shiver. Arda was, perhaps for the first time in his existence, lost in thought. One main question bugged him. How did the Imperialists know about him? What was stranger was that they knew about his knowledge, not anything about him, like his apparent immortality. What also bothered him was that they recognized him, which surely meant they somehow got hands on information about his appearance or even a picture. But how? How could Zeta have information on him? Why did Zeta have information on him? If there was any planet that could have data on Arda, he would have expected it to be Earth, which led him to a very unlikely theory. What if Zeta was Earth? But that couldn't be. Well, yes, the similarities between Earth and Zeta were undeniable, uncanny, and frankly suspicious. There was also undeniable evidence that they couldn't be the same planet. Sure, it wasn't impossible. In the seemingly infinite universe, there was a world almost exactly like Earth. Yet there was a difference with the solar system, which he had already addressed. The sun was definitely not the same sun. It had less mass and was a smaller yellow star. He could tell that much. The planets he passed by while entering the solar system were different. None were Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Mars. The entire geological construction of the planet was also impossibly different from that of Earth's. He'd seen maps. There was no resemblance he could find. Even if it had been many, many years since the 34th century on Earth, it didn't add up. How could the surface change so much while the language and species stayed almost the exact same? To say his theory was a stretch was an understatement. But even if he was right, and frankly he was pretty sure himself that he wasn't, it didn't explain how they had information on him. We're near the city. Arda merely looked over as Blake walked up to him and spoke. He had been caught by surprise, but he wasn't human enough to flinch or react in any way. I know a place to camp out for the night, Blake said. He had gathered some sticks and twigs of small bushes that had been growing in the path they were taking back to the city. We'll set up a fire. He studied Arda carefully. Seriously? That didn't scare you at all? I saw your expression. You were totally lost in thought. And you didn't even react when I suddenly broke you out of your trance? There's no need to react so over the top, Arda stated. Never had a need to, since there's no predator I generally need to watch out for, and so no reason to be so on guard. In truth, Arda had been startled. No way he was telling Blake that, though. Blake rolled his gray eyes behind his goggles. Weird reflex, but okay. What'd you think about then? Arda shook his head. Nothing much. Still haven't come to a conclusion to what happened back there. I have to agree with the confusion. Blake crossed his arms as he walked, the bundle of sticks still in his arms. But don't think about it too hard. It's weird, sure, but you'll be no closer to the answer if you keep thinking. Speaking from personal experience, if you have to think on something for more than 10 minutes, then it's no use. You'll just keep on coming back to the same question over and over again. And you've been thinking about it for the past hour or so. I don't like handling a situation with unclear information and vague, unproven theories. Arda sighed. He looked at the ground. He had a strong urge to frown, but suppressed it. But I suppose you might have a point. Frick you. Blake poked Arda sharply in the shoulder. I do have a point, just admit it. Arda picked up his pace, not answering. What? Hey! This is by far the biggest batch of meat we've gotten in years, Jada remarked as she sorted through the bags again, sitting with legs crisscrossed. They had climbed into a building through a broken window to find a room relatively closed off. They piled some papers from a box in the room, seemingly placed there on purpose, on the floor in the middle, and also added the sticks they'd found. A fire was then lit, and the four of them huddled around it. Tink had brought some dry food for Jada, Blake, and herself. She was munching on a small piece of jerky happily. Blake was picking at his food, staring into the fire, deep in thought. Jada was recounting the bags for the dozenth time. This is good. We were lucky the caribou were chased in our direction by the Imperialists. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm tempted to thank them. Not in person, though, Tink said, taking a drink of water in the metal canteen. It had a long chain connected to it, and after she was done, she placed it into the fire by the chain and laid it outside the mini fireplace. To keep it warm, Arda guessed. After what we pulled, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to shoot you on sight. They're quite petty. No arguments there, Jada agreed. Blake suddenly shifted and lay down with his side to the fire. He'd taken out his hair tie, and his long blonde hair was splayed out around his head. His gun was still on his belt, and his metallic stick laid at his side. I don't know why, but I'm spent. I got hit by lightning twice, and you're the one tired? Arda arched an eyebrow at him. Really? Blake tilted his head backwards and looked at Arda, who would have appeared upside down to him. Was that humor? Oh my gosh, this is a revelation. Jada, Tink, not Celis Arda Zephny, just use humor. Jada rolled her eyes, leaning back on her arms. Oh wow, what a discovery. Good for you, Blake. Tink turned and snorted, trying and failing to hide her laugh. It must be shocking for you, Arda commented. In all honesty, he was also surprised. That was humor. Yeah, they were right. He'd made a joke and he hadn't even realized it. He thought that was simply the truth, and that was why he said it, but he had realized that in the last few days, he was starting to grow a sense of humor, something he didn't know he was capable of. He didn't know why, or how. He couldn't figure out why being on Zeta was suddenly making him feel emotions other than loneliness. Maybe it was because he was around humans, organisms structured similarly to him. He wasn't sure. He didn't like this lack of knowledge he was suddenly experiencing. It was ironic. He was on the planet that was almost the exact same, minus the apocalypse, as the very planet he seemed to be omniscient about, up to a certain point. And yet it was the planet where he knew the least about the situation. He wasn't used to it. A piece of jerky smacked him in the face. Alright, this is getting scary. Blake, the cause of the jerky in his face, said, still laying down on the ground. First you zoned out on the walk here, and then you knowingly made a joke, and now you look borderline worried. Not to mention when you hesitated shooting that one Imperialist. Blake swung his arm over and snapped his fingers in Arda's face, which was not the first nor the second time he'd done so in the past week. I was only mostly joking when I called you emotionless, but this is kind of worrying and scary. No offense. No offense taken when it's the truth, Arda pointed out, as the jerky fell off his forehead and landed on his hand. He looked at it, then at Blake, holding it out. No, you take it, Blake said. Eat it. I don't care if you don't need to eat, but maybe acting like a human once in a while can help you actually develop a personality. Arda looked at the piece of jerky. I don't need a personality. No, but it would be nice if you had one. He looked at the blonde skeptically, but slowly chewed on the jerky anyway. He flinched and made a face as his taste buds were flooded with the saltiness. Arda knew that there was barely any salt on there, but he also knew that after an undetermined amount of time without ever using his taste buds, they were overreacting with the first thing he's eaten since pretty much forever in his mind. Now that he thought about it, it was the first time he'd ever eaten and experienced, wasn't it? It was the first time he'd ever tasted salt on his own. Geez, sorry, is it that bad? Arda shook his head, chewing as he slowly got used to it. Just never ate anything before. Knowing what salt tastes like and actually experiencing it are two different things. Blake stared at him. Wait, that was the first thing you've ever eaten? Yes, Arda replied, taking another bite. It wasn't so bad. I feel sorry for you, Jada chimed in. You've never tasted the heaven of tea? You poor thing. Seriously, you're bringing your tea obsession into this? Ting said, and the two females quickly plunged into an argument about tea and coffee, both rare luxury goods and sought after by many in Sector 8. Blake snorted. Ignore them. Well, I think I just found another reason to get you to develop a personality. What does eating food have to do with personality? Arda asked. Well, we gotta find out what kind of food you would like. You have to have a personality for that. Blake grabbed a second piece of jerky. They were only given 2 to begin with, and ate it slowly, savoring it. Besides, food is a universal sign of truth. Arda was silent for a few moments, staring at the last bit of jerky in his hand, before finishing it off. Even if that was true, I won't be here long enough to develop one. I haven't had one for at least a few dozen years. I doubt I will have one soon. Blake pouted, before declaring, Well, challenge accepted. Good luck, but you won't need it, because it won't be of any use. I'm leaving in just over 4 days anyway. He seemed to have forgotten about that. Oh, yeah. He seemed genuinely sad. Well, at least I can get started. Just watch, Arda. I'll kickstart your personality and claim the bragging rights. Just go to sleep. It's late. Oh, fine. True to his word, Blake tried his best. Arda had to give him credit. Over the next 3 days, somehow finding time in between all the counterattack preparations and training the Northsphere members, he managed to pester Arda with questions and offer him a concerning amount of gifts. Jada says I'm not creative, Blake said, while offering him a small piece of something that looked a lot like a lemon bar, but tasted more like sweet corn. I don't know what she meant by that, but I think finding a personality starts with finding what you like first. There was a moment of tentative silence as Arda tried the dessert-like food. Well, what did you think? Arda shrugged. It's not bad. Blake was silent as he stared up at the ceiling, thinking. You know what? He finally decided. I'll count that as a success. For 3 days, Blake would either offer Arda a portion of his own food to try, or somehow find the time to sneak into the kitchen and steal something small. Arda was a little too shocked to report him, but he did tell Blake off and told him to keep it to a minimum, as telling him to stop completely seems like too big of a task for him. He wasn't even sure how Blake managed to sneak into the kitchen with the watchful chef always scolding people while holding a spatula menacingly. Arda wasn't entirely sure if it was working, however. He didn't know how to develop a personality from nothing. Blake claimed it was, but Arda wasn't too certain. All he had done was respond to Blake's questions with whether or not he liked the foods and what he thought about them if they were too bland. Not that there are a lot of spices in any of the food, or salty, or sweet, or anything. Blake also occasionally brought him some small trivial things, bombarding him with questions when he did. In the span of 3 short days, Arda had acquired a small plain bracelet, a personalized canteen. Blake had 2 for some reason, and insisted that Arda kept one of them, because it was old anyway, and a special pen that was able to write while upside down, which was actually quite common. Arda was hesitant to admit it, but by the evening of the 3rd day, the evening before the counterattack against the Imperialists, he had begun to appreciate it. He had begun to appreciate Blake's gifts and his kindness. "Well?" Blake had asked when he gave Arda the pen. "Your world doesn't have a magnetic technology as advanced as ours, right? So I figured you guys probably didn't have these kind of pens." "Actually, we did," Arda replied, studying the pen. A pressurized pen. Zero-gravity pens had to be developed for use in space, unless they wanted to be stuck with pencil, which needed to be sharpened and changed often. Oh, I suppose that makes sense," Blake sighed. "Well, I got you one anyway, because you didn't have one. Maybe before the launch I could somehow get you a journal or something, and you'll be able to record things in space. It might help with the loneliness up there." His voice got oddly quiet towards the end. Arda looked at him. "There's no need. I know how precious paper is. You can keep the pen too." Blake's expression snapped back to normal. "Oh no, you keep that. That's for you. So, what do you think of it?" He was quiet for a while. "It's fine. Thank you." The blonde's blue eyes brightened. "No problem, my dear Mr. Not Cellist.